I have been asked on a few occasions about why it is that John is not included in the Synoptics, and it can be confusing at first because a lot of people, especially those of us that have been Christian, are basically under the impression that all four canonical Gospels are consistent or similar to each other. Unfortunately, this is verifiably untrue. The problem with John is threefold. First, there are very few parallels between John and the other Gospels. There are very few stories that are represented in the other Gospels. John has a lot of exclusive material. Compounding this problem with the lack of parallels, even the connected stories are untraceable. There are very big differences between John's account and the other accounts. In other words, there is no evidence that John drew from any of these accounts, yet there are some stories that are similar, and some of those stories are exclusive, meaning one parallel may be similar to a Luke exclusive, while another parallel is similar to a Mark exclusive. Yet none of them can give us priority because the stories are too different, and there are simply not enough connections. The second problem with John is that this text appears very Gnostic. Anytime you have a text that talks about Jesus as the truth or the light or the Logos, you probably have a Gnostic text, and John is simply loaded with these references. This makes it even more difficult because in the battle between Gnosticism and Catholicism, the loser was Gnosticism. A ton of Gnostic texts have been destroyed or lost to time. The Catholics only kept the sources that would back up their theology and their heresy claims. That means Gnostic scholarship will be very limited. And we can't really trust the Catholic claims because, again, they're only trying to support their theology. Reality is not the primary goal of Catholic scholarship. This brings us to a third problem. It is possible that more than one author exists here. The minimal parallels, the potential for two endings, and one potentially very out-of-place exclusive story in John could mean that we have a very long list of authors here. If this text was originally Gnostic, it would make sense that changes had to be made for it to fit into an Orthodox canon. So all of these problems make John a complete nightmare. Now, where does that leave us on the whole John problem? Well, we can automatically grant one thing, and that is the first connection date with Orthodoxy. That date is surprisingly Theophilus of Antioch in 169 to 183. This is the first time that John is quoted in the Orthodox lineage. Now, Theophilus is the first person to have Luke and Acts as well, so adding John for the first time to the Orthodox lineage points strongly to the idea that Theophilus was trying to create a universal canon. And that's great for Marcion's priority, but it does nothing for John's history. It only provides a date where John made contact with Orthodoxy. Before this, we have a hearsay account and a minimal description of Heracleon's notes on John. Heracleon gives us nothing because he's assumed to be living around 175, and that's in the middle of our connection date. Though the claim also is that Heracleon was a follower of Valentinius the Gnostic. So little of Heracleon exists that the text is worthless, but a Valentinius connection seems plausible. Now, I'm going to note a few oddities here, mainly because I have so little that everything will likely be important. With Theophilus of Antioch, we have the first Orthodox connection with John, and Luke and Acts were likely written for him personally. Second, Theophilus is the first Orthodox person to address the concept of the Trinity, and as far as we can tell through fragments of Marcellus of Ancyra, this was originally a Valentinian concept. And finally, Theophilus is very interested in cosmology and the meaning of stars. Theophilus seems to believe that the sky is literally heaven, or an exact representation of heaven. We can call this his star mystery. Even though Theophilus is added to the later Catholic lineage, Theophilus gives every appearance of being a Gnostic. I'm sure I'll explore Theophilus much later, but that's what I have for now. So currently this is what John looks like, and I have no idea what I'll find next, if anything. John's entry at 169 to 183 could be a creation date, but there's no external or internal support for these dates at this time. Also, very quickly, I'm going to run into the time frame of the Diatessaron. I may be forced to explore that text. There are some mentions that are highly interesting and may lead to a different conclusion about what makes up this text. I'm not certain that it will help on John, but I'm not excluding any possibilities at this point.